In his book, Letter to a Man in a Fire, cancer survivor Reynolds Price responds to a letter from a young medical student named Jim, who has developed a life-threatening cancer. In his letter to Reynolds Price, Jim writes, "I want to believe in a God who cares, because I may meet him sooner than I had expected. I think I am at the point where I can accept the existence of God, but I can't yet believe God cares about me." There are those who doubt that God or Jesus cares for them. There is a story told about a boy who was in the kitchen one night while his mother was making supper. She asked him to go to the pantry and bring her a can of tomato soup. The boy flatly refused because he was afraid of the dark pantry. The mother tried and tried to get him to go to the closet, but the boy wasn't having any of it. He stated that he didn't know what was in the pantry, and he didn't want to find out. Finally, the mother told him that he didn't need to be afraid because Jesus would be in the pantry with him. After a moment's hesitation, the little boy walked to the pantry door, cracked it open, and said, "Excuse me, Jesus, could you hand me that can of tomato soup?" He even said, "Please." The boy didn't know what was in there, so he needed reassurance. There are those who need reassurance that Jesus cares for them. An unknown author wrote these words, "It is his will that I should cast my care on him each day. He also bids me not to cast my confidence away. But oh, how foolishly I act when taken unaware. I cast away my confidence and carry all my care." There are those who reject Jesus' care for them. Frank Graff was a Methodist minister who had a reputation for being a cheerful person. In fact, among his friends and fellow ministers, he was known as the Sunshine Minister. One of his friends, Austin C. Miles, described Graff this way: "He is a spiritual optimist, a great friend of children. His bright, sun-shining disposition attracts him not only to children, but to all whom he comes in contact." In spite of this cheerful attitude, Graff sometimes faced some difficult times in his life. It was during such a time that he asked himself the question, does Jesus care? As he struggled with that question, he wrote the hymn, "Does Jesus Care?" It's number 507 in our hymn books. Does Jesus care when my heart is pained, too deeply for mirth or song, as the burdens press and the cares distressed, and the way grows weary and long? Does Jesus care when my way is dark, with the nameless dread and fear? As the daylight fades into deep night shades, does he care enough to be near? Does Jesus care when I've tried and failed to resist some temptation strong, when for my deep grief there is no relief, though my tears flow all night long? Does Jesus care when I've said goodbye to the dearest on earth to me, and my sad heart aches till it nearly breaks? Is it aught to him? Does he see? The refrain of the hymn answers that question like this: "Oh yes, he cares. I know he cares. His heart is touched with my grief. When the days are weary, the long nights dreary, I know my Savior cares." There are those who believe that Jesus cares for them, and that is the correct view, the view taught in Scripture. In Mark the 4th chapter, verses 35 through 38, we read of an occasion in the ministry of Jesus. Evening comes, Jesus says to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Now, there were a couple of different perspectives going on here, weren't there? The disciples, many of them experienced fishermen, knew that the storm was dangerous. They knew that water was not supposed to be in the boat. The boat was just supposed to be in the water. They saw a bad situation. Jesus, on the other hand, was taking a nap. Jesus had a different perspective. They asked him, "Don't you care?" And of course Jesus cared. Jesus could sleep in the boat during a storm because he had the power to calm the wind and waves, and did so. By way of analogy, when we face the storms of life, some of those that we've just described, in the storms of life, Jesus has a power and he cares. He can help us with those difficulties. Jesus is God become man. He is the only one who fits that definition. In Hebrews chapter 2, verses 14 through 18, we read, "Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. For surely it is not angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants. For this reason he had to be made like them, fully human in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of people, because he himself suffered when he was tempted. He is able to help those who are being tempted." God became man in Jesus. Jesus was fully God and fully man while on this earth. And he was the perfect man, the only human who ever lived without sin. But he experienced what we experience. A little later in Hebrews we read, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin." Jesus has gone through what we go through. He was tempted to sin. He did not sin. He was the perfect sacrifice. But he experienced hunger, fatigue, sorrow. He experienced the temptation to sin. He experienced everything we experienced. He suffered, as we often do. Sometimes we say, when we describe a situation, often a bad situation, well, you just needed to be there, just had to be there. Well, Jesus has been there. He has gone through what we go through. Jesus understands what it is to be tempted. He understands what it is to see a loved one die. He understands, and he cares. In Luke, the 7th chapter, verses 11 through 15, we read these words, "Soon afterward, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went along with him. As he approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And a large crowd from the town was with her. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her, and he said, 'Don't cry.' Then he went up and touched the bier they were carrying him on, and the bearer stood still. He said, 'Young man, I say to you, get up.' The dead man sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother." How many funeral processions did Jesus encounter during his ministry? But this one, he acted. Here was a widow. Her only son had died. He was probably her means of support. But Jesus cared, and he raised the son from the dead. Jesus had some close friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. He spent the night with them, I'm sure, ate with them. In John chapter 11, we're told that Lazarus was sick. His sister sent word to Jesus that Lazarus was sick. Jesus delayed going to Lazarus. By the time he gets there, Lazarus has died. Been dead 4 days. The sisters say, you know, if you had been here, you could have healed him. Jesus had a purpose in waiting. And in verses 32 of chapter 11, beginning verse 32 through 35, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. Jesus saw others mourning. Lazarus was dead. Some of them, perhaps all of them, believed in a future resurrection. But Lazarus was dead. If Jesus had just been there, he could have healed him. Jesus is moved in spirit and troubled. He shared in their grief. It's also possible that the word means he was angry. Angry with the condition where because of sin entering the world, we all die. Where have you laid him? Come and see, Lord. And everyone's favorite memory verse, 2 words that say so much, Jesus wept. He did not weep because he had no hope of the resurrection of Lazarus. In fact, in just a moment, he raised Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus would have another funeral somewhere down the road. But on this day, he came forth from the tomb. And some were amazed and responded in faith. The critics of Jesus says, we've got to get rid of this man and get rid of him now. You know, I've been to 7 funerals this year, 4 of them in the last 2 months. Most of those individuals had lived long lives, but one died at the age of 41, leaving behind his young wife and 2 young daughters. Jay has experienced the death of both parents in just the period of a few weeks. I am comforted. I believe Jay is comforted in knowing that Jesus cared when each of those persons died and each of his parents died. Jesus showed the ultimate care for us by leaving heaven, becoming a man, and dying on a cross. Charles Finley, an African-American minister, wrote, "Leave it there. If your body suffers pain and your health you can't regain, and your soul is almost sinking in despair, Jesus knows the pain you feel. He can save and he can heal. Take your burden to the Lord and leave it there. When your youthful days are gone and old age is stealing on, and your body bends beneath the weight of care, he will never leave you then. He'll go with you to the end. Take your burden to the Lord and leave it there. Leave it there, leave it there. Take your burden to the Lord and leave it there. If you trust and never doubt, he will surely bring you out. Take your burden to the Lord and leave it there." Number 525 in our song books is a song we don't sing. It's entitled, "He Knows Just What I Need." My Jesus knows when I am lonely. He knows each pain. He sees each tear. He understands each lonely heartache. He understands and always cares. My Jesus knows when I am burdened. He knows how much my heart can bear. He lifts me up when I am sinking. He brings me joy beyond compare. When other friends seem to forget me, when skies are dark, when hope seems gone, by faith I feel his arms about me and hear him say, "You're not not alone. My Jesus knows just what I need. Oh, yes, He knows just what I need. He satisfies and every need supplies. Yes, He knows just what I need. My Jesus knows what I need. Yes, He knows.